Okay, you can start now.
Now I cover in this unit. But before I start, please let me know if I'm audible. Uh, that would really help. Let me know if I can see there are very few people. I'm audible, then I'll just continue. Good afternoon. Hello, am I audible? Okay, wait. Am I audible now? Hello, am I audible now? Okay. Thank you so much for letting me know. I will share the screen. Don't worry about that. I am going to share the screen. Uh, okay. So I'm going to start. Do let me know when you can't hear, then I'll fix my mic. But this problem just keeps happening. I don't know why. Uh, I'm sorry about that, but I will try to fix it. But anyway, so today we are going to start with the second unit of your syllabus, which is in the domestic sphere. Now we discussed this very briefly in the last class. So I will start a little bit. I'll start discussing it from the book first, and then we will go on to the poem. So just 1 minute. Okay. So in this unit, what we are going to do, as we discussed in the last class, is that you're going to understand how to read a poem. Now, why is this important? It is important so that you understand how to read between the lines. When something is given to you, uh, you understand how you can read it better. तो जैसे if you are given a story book and आप वो story पढ़ रहे हो, you might just see कि story बहुत simple सा है, but actually में story can have more underlying meaning to it. There can be more meaning to that story. So the important part is that you understand कि story actually क्या बताना चाह रहा है, and just not what is there in front of you. Because a lot of times people try to speak of very complicated and very complex matters related to society through stories and poems, but they cannot it's not written directly. So what you have to do is you have to read the material and then understand how you can understand what is actually being said in it, or what are the themes that are being explored in it. So that is what we are going to do in this unit. We are going to read this poem, The Lost Word by Esther Morgan, and we are going to try to see what Esther Morgan is trying to say in this poem, which is just not a very simple poem. So, as you can see, the learning objectives of this chapter is to understand poetic language, is to understand mainly how to read a poem. Then it is to critically analyze a poem. That is what I was telling you. So this is not just necessary for poem, but whenever you read something, what वो story हो, short story हो, novel हो, poem हो, you should be able to understand उसका deeper meaning क्या है, just not what is right there in front of you. So you should understand the theme and the theme and the style and the way the author or the poet is trying to bring out more complicated stuff. The third point is to engage with the hidden biases within language itself. So to understand language, this is like this whole course that you're doing is on English fluency. So your understanding of language has to be very clear. It can't just be very vague. It has to, you have to understand ki what actually is being trying to said, like what actually is being said in the poem. Because when you see your question papers, you will have passages where you have to understand meaning, you have to answer questions from those passages. So it is important that you understand key what is written in these passages, what is written in the poem, so that you can make sense of it. The fourth point is to understand the issue of voice and identity. Now this is mainly about this particular poem. You can understand every poem and every story deals with a different issue. This one has an, like this one talks majorly about identity, so which is something you're supposed to understand within this poem. And the last one is the marginal position of women in traditional societies. So this is also directly related to this particular poem, but this is like an example. You're supposed to read things and you're supposed to understand these social issues that are there in the writing itself. The issues that actually are very important to society, that people write about, so that more people can be made aware, so that your understanding becomes better. So this is what we are going to primarily try to do in this particular in this particular unit. So let us now okay, let's see what actually is being said about how to read a poem. You will find some discussion on poetic language in the next chapter, which we will discuss later. But here we will talk about what is, like I said, the inner meaning and what is being suggested. Reading poetry is like peeling an onion. Now, this is a very good metaphor or a very good comparison, simply because simply because uh, like I said, whatever is there on the surface is not the only thing that matters. There are meaning, like there is a meaning underneath that surface meaning, and that is what you have to find out. That is what will give you the actual perspective on why the poem is the way it is. So it is like peeling an onion. How when we peel an onion, एक layer के बाद एक layer बाहर आता है. Same with reading poetry. If you know how to read a poetry properly, you will see कि जो आप पढ़ रहे हो is just the surface of it. थोड़ा सा if you go deep और एक meaning निकल आएगा, and maybe जो I am teaching you is not the only meaning. If you can read and like delve into it deeper, shayad you will find something else that like possibly did not find. So it is very interesting to see how there are these layers and layers of meaning that you can dig and bring out when you're reading something. So instead of looking for a core meaning, we should try to see the several layers. So instead, yeah, the several layers. To begin with, we must try to understand that the words in a poem are like clues in a treasure hunt. So this is now you have to understand each and every word that is being used by the poet, because mostly it is being done with an intention. Iska matlab, when a poet or an author is writing something, they are using words, right, to express themselves. Now उनके दिमाग में कुछ चल रहा है, which is why they are using these particular words. They could have used some other word, but they are not using it क्योंकि उनको एक they want to convey a certain emotion, they want to convey a certain issue, they want to convey a certain feeling जो बस इसी word से बाहर आ सकता है. So each word that you read are there for a purpose. They have been put there with an intention. तो आपका काम है to read and understand कि what the author or the poet is actually trying to say. But unlike a treasure hunt, where the objective of the hunt is to find the treasure, in poetry the objective is not to find the hidden meaning, but to find a network of clues that gives the poet its form and substance. So what they are trying to say is कि, like I said, because poetry का एक meaning नहीं है, तो even though it is like a treasure hunt, आप hunt कर रहे हो, आप ढूंढ रहे हो कुछ meaning, एक मीनिंग बस नहीं है. The objective is not to find that one meaning that is there. The objective is to find the network of meanings and the network of uh, different uh, issues that come out and finally form this one poem with all its substance. Thus, while reading a poem, we should try to figure out all the possible clues and the that are hidden in the words. This is what I was saying. Like we have to dig out and figure out all the possible all the possible meaning that exists in that particular like exists. So now before we start with the explanation of the poem, what we'll do is we'll read the poem once. Just 1 minute. Yeah. So this is the poem that we are going to discuss, and through this poem मैं जैसे पढ़ा रही हूँ या फिर जो बुक में लिखा है, in this same manner आप लोग different poems and different novels, different articles approach कर सकते हो. So my job here is to teach you how to approach it. क्या क्या points दिमाग में रखना चाहिए when you're reading something, ताकि आपको ज़्यादा meaning समझ में आए. You can understand the layers of meaning. So for this particular reason, I am going to just show you the approach. This poem is not obviously the only poem in the world. तो आप ये approach apply करेंगे to all the other things that you read. So before we, like I said, before we start with analyzing the poem, let us read the poem first. Going to zoom it in case. The Lost Word by Esther Morgan. She lost a word and searches for it everywhere. Behind the sofa, at the back of dusty cupboards and drawers, she picks through the buzzing rubbish sacks. Under the carpet, she finds lots of others. She'd forgotten she'd swept there, but not the one she's looking for. The trouble is, it's small, only 2 letters, though no less valuable for that. She stands racking her brains for the last time she used it, but all that comes to mind are failed attempts when her mouth was full of someone else's tongue. So the poem is pretty simple. Let us read it one more time, a little slowly, so that you can understand the words better. The Lost Word by Esther Morgan. She's lost a word and searches for it everywhere. Behind the sofa, at the back of dusty cupboards and drawers. She picks through the buzzing rubbish sacks. Under the carpet, she finds lots of others. She'd forgotten she had swept there, but not the one she's looking for. The trouble is, it's small, only 2 letters, though no less valuable for that. She stands racking her brain for the last time she used it, but all that comes to mind are failed attempts when her mouth was full of someone else's tongue. Now you can see that this is a very simple poem, and the title of the poem is very interesting. Title matlab the name of the poem is very interesting. It's called The Lost Word. जैसे एक word is something you can lose. Like it is like earrings. Like as if the word is a pair of earrings that you lost because it's so small. So the word here is being made to look like an object, a thing that you can possibly lose. And now this person, the she in the poem, she's looking for it everywhere. She's looking for it behind the sofa, at the back of the cupboard, and her drawers. Like how you would look for a piece, like how you would look for a pair of earrings. She even looks in the rubbish sack. मतलब she also looks through the garbage कि गलती से if someone has thrown it there or she threw it there herself. She looks for it under the carpet, and what she finds is a lot of other things that she swept over there, like a lot of other words. जैसे पहले कोई चीज if she had lost, मतलब पहले the words she had lost, she probably just swept it under there. Like how if a pair of earrings fall and no one sees it, and you just sweep your room and it goes to one corner. वैसे ही this has happened to two words. And she even forgot about them because this happened so long ago. तो उसको like इनको याद भी नहीं है कि she has swept these or these were lost. But she did not find the one she was immediately looking for. The word that she immediately lost. But and the trouble was, like the problem was that it was small. So imagine अगर एक छोटा सा pair of earrings get lost, then the problem is कि वो बहुत छोटा है. So you can't really find it. But it is not that it's not valuable. Like it can be a very small pair of diamond earrings, so it's very valuable. Similarly, the word that she lost is very small and it's only two letters, but it does not mean that it is not valuable enough. It has a lot of value and she's looking for it because she wants to find it. She stands and she's thinking about it, like she's trying to go through her memory, she's trying to remember where was the last time she used it, because we usually try to connect our memory to see when was the last time we used it and then where we kept it. Similarly, she was doing that for this word. She was thinking, when did she use this word the last time? But she could think about nothing. Nothing was coming to her mind except the attempts where she failed to remember. Like the failed attempts when her mouth was filled with someone else's tongue, matlab someone else's language. We do know, we call, like we say, our mother tongue, right? So by someone else's tongue here, it means someone else's language. So she cannot remember, she could not remember the word that she was looking for, because all she could, because her memory was full of all the times that her mouth was filled with someone else's language when she was speaking someone else's language. So as you can see, the poem is very simple, but at the same time very deep. It is talking about something as crucial as language, which forms our identity. तो जैसे हम लोग क्लास में इंग्लिश में बात कर रहे हैं because it is an English fluency class, but we do know our mother tongue. We all come from different parts of this country and we do know our mother tongue and it's very important to us. Imagine आप बहुत साल से आपकी mother tongue use नहीं कर रहे हैं, but your mother tongue is what forms your identity. आप जिस language में बचपन से बात करते आ रहे हो, that is who you are. It tells you about your culture, it tells you about your tradition, it is where you belong. So imagine not having used it for many years and using someone else's language, like using English. So you lose touch with your identity, you lose touch with who you are, where you actually belong. So this poem, even though it sounds like a lost pair of jewelry, which is just a precious piece of jewelry, is actually not that simple, because this poem is about losing word, which means losing language, which in turn means losing identity. तो ये बहुत layered poem hai, as you can understand, jo we discussed when we were starting. The idea is to understand the layers. Now we will break down the poem and see how this has been explained to you, and how you can, and through this you can see how you can read other pieces of work. So before we go any forward, uh, any questions so far about the poem, or any observation that you guys have, anything that you want to say about the poem, because we just read the poem twice and I gave a very simple explanation. So if anyone wants to say anything, just very quickly, in like 2-3 minutes I'm giving you, just say something, like if you want to say, then I will start with the explanation that's given in the book. anyone wants to say anything about the poem? Any observation that you have, whether you understood the poem or not? Like we read it twice, so if you understood the poem. What other name can you give it, Adarsh? Think about it. Uh, Lavanya, it's not important what word she is looking for. We don't know what word she's looking for because she can't remember it herself, right? She's trying to think what those two words are. She's trying to think where she last used it. She can't remember it. She has lost them. So imagine if you lose a piece of earring and you probably can very vaguely remember, जैसे बहुत like you have some memory of it कि हाँ this is lost, ये गुम गया है, but you'd have no idea कि you can't explain कि कैसे proper, like how did it exactly look, or your memory of it is not that strong. That is the point of this poem, that she has lost the word. She knows ki the word is lost, but she can't remember the like she can't remember what the words are, because every time she's trying to remember, all she can remember is the attempts that she took and she could not remember, and the attempts that were wasted because she was using someone else's language. She was speaking in someone else's language. I will just explain the third stanza once again because that is a little complicated. Wait, I'll just explain the third stanza once again. So what she's saying is that the words that she lost is important, and she is trying to remember the last time she used it so she can remember where it is, but all that she can think of are the failed attempts, matlab the attempts that she took and which did not work because her mouth was full of someone else's language. So say we all come, okay, for example, we all come from different regions in the country, right? And we all have our own mother tongue. Some people's mother tongue is English itself, but I'm just talking about the people whose mother tongue is not English and some other regional language. But the problem here is we use English so much. We are always mostly communicating in English. We are studying in English. We communicate on, like, with our friends in English. We watch a lot of things in English or read things in English. So now, many years later, when this has become a habit, you are so much in touch with this language, you suddenly think about many years later, kyun? Even now, say sometimes you're just sitting and you can't remember this Hindi word. Like you know what it means. You know ki what you want to say. You can feel it inside you कि मुझे ये बोलना है. But you can't remember the word that you can use because you're just not using your language that much. You're not practicing your language that much. Everything is practice, right? Even though our mother tongue is something that we instinctively pick up, it is still not a permanent, like it still requires practice. You know how to, you obviously know how to speak the preliminary level, but to make it better, everything requires practice. Practice and consistency are the only things that help you do anything in the world. So similarly, she is trying to think about the two words because they are important. She needs it. But she can't remember when she used it because she was so busy using another language, speaking in another language. She was so busy uh, just thinking in that language that today, when she wants to look for those two words, they don't come to her mind. So, this is what the third para is actually trying to say. Forgotten means याद नहीं आना. तुम कुछ भूल रहे हो. That is what forgetting is. Yes, Adarsh, exactly that. अगर आप एक foreign country में हो and you can't use your mother tongue बहुत दिन से, then you start, uh, you obviously remember your mother tongue, but you know कुछ words आप भूल जाते हो, accent आ जाती है. So these problems happen because everything at the end of the day is about practice. Okay, now we will see how it has been explained in your book and how you can, like, how you can approach this poem so that you can, uh, like, how you can use the of method to approach all the different things that you read. That is what we are going to see now. Okay, so the first thing that they asked us to do is to look at the title of the poem or the name of the poem. Why is it so? Because I'll give you a reason. Whenever you read, say, a newspaper, something as simple as a newspaper, आप जब newspaper पढ़ते हो, you see a heading, कुछ हुआ है, say like with the COVID cases only, the Omicron cases. So you see the heading Omicron cases spiking in India. So you know कि आप जो पढ़ने वाले हो, उसके नीचे जो article है, you know what this article is about. It is about the Omicron cases rising in India. Similarly, when you read a poem, इस poem का title है The Lost Word. So the title gives you an idea कि आप जो पढ़ने वाले हो, what that could be about. एक relation है. So you are ready कि आप क्या पढ़ने जा रहे हो. So the title of anything, be it newspaper articles, be it a story, be it a novel, be it a poem, be it आपकी essays, जो आप exams में essays लिखते हो. जैसे आप जब कॉम्प्रिहेंशन पैसेजेस करते थे स्कूल में, एक क्वेश्चन बहुत फ्रीक्वेंटली आता था, what could be the title of this passage? That is to teach you how you can make a title so that it has some relation with the passage that you just read. So this is why you always start with the title. So here it's said, like it's written, let us begin our treasure hunt with the title of the poem. This poem, as the title tells us, is about a lost word. So when you start reading this poem, the first thing that you see is इसका title है The Lost Word. तो आपको पता चल जाता है कि ये poem एक lost word के बारे में. Now forget whether आपको थोड़ा सा strange लगता है कि what is a word, like how can you lose a word. Forget all that. But you know कि this poem is probably about this strange thing called losing a word. So it does sound strange if we take the title literally, which means कि it is strange if you look at the title and you think of a word very literally, कि how can you lose a word? But again, it is a poem, right? And it is something that is written, which is what I was telling you, कि हर वक्त जो surface में meaning है, या everything that's just written is not the only meaning that exists. So, like I drew the comparison between a word and jewelry, like a pair of earrings. If the name of the poem was The Lost Earrings, आपको strange नहीं लगता because आप earrings सच में lose कर सकते हो. पर आपको strange लगा because you think कि word कैसे you can lose? How can you lose a word? But only if you just think of it कि ये word शायद एक object की तरह treat कर रहा है poet ने. Like the poet is using this word as an object. That moment only, when you stop taking this literally and you just think of it a little poetically, in that moment, it will not sound strange to you. You will be like, yeah, that can happen. The poet is just talking about a word as an object and is trying to say something deeper. So that is what is written over here. So we must admit that the image of a lost word is striking because we never hear of a word being lost. Obviously, we cannot take this literally. There must be a deeper meaning which is not stated but implied. Let us then probe a little more, which means let us then dig a little more. When we lose a thing, we cannot use it for our needs. Like that pair of earring. If you lose that pair of earring, you cannot use it. So when we cannot use a word, we regard it as lost to us, which is what I was saying. आप एक word याद करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, अगर आपको वो word याद नहीं आता है, you have lost that word. वो word गुम हो गया है. You can't remember it. It's not there in your memory. Yes, it exists somewhere. जैसे even the hearings that you can lose will exist somewhere. वो कहीं पे है, पर आपके पास नहीं है. That is what the title is trying to say. How do we lose words? We lose words if we forget them or we do not use them for a very long time, as I was saying. At the same time, if we have not learned to use a word, then it is as good as a lost word. Now, this is a different separate instance. कि आपको ये word मालूम ही नहीं है. You have never come across this word or you don't know this word. In that case, it is also a word that is as good as lost to you. Even though I would argue कि it's not lost then. It's like not having a pair of earrings. Like say you know that this pair of earrings exists, you saw it in the market, but आपके पास नहीं है. So it's not particularly lost. It just doesn't belong to you. You don't have access to it. But our learning and using of words is largely dependent on the society we live in. So let us think about why we might not have learned that word. It's largely because of the society we live in, right? Like wherever we are living, like others said, that if we go to a foreign country and if we go to a foreign country and we keep speaking in their language, then we are likely to not remember a lot from our language. And more importantly, we will not develop new words in our language. Like we will not learn new things about our language. हम लोग जितना सीख के गए थे, that is the only knowledge that we have, because the society that we are living in now in the foreign country, वहाँ पे आपकी language का चर्चा नहीं है, तो you are not going to improve. Your knowledge of your language is going to be stagnant to the point आप जितना सीख के जा रहे थे, like आप आप जितना सीख के गए हो. So that is what it means when the author says that it is largely dependent on the society we live in, because it is from society that we pick up our mannerisms, we pick up our language, we pick up the way we talk, we pick up the style we use to talk. We don't use words that the society does not allow us to use. Later on in the unit, we will discuss the relationship between language and society. But for now, let us conclude that in the title of the poem, the word lost refers to the word which the woman has not learned to use or has forgotten how to use. So this is something we already said, that through the title you can understand that this particular woman has lost a word because she has either forgotten it or because she never learned it. So this is like the first bit. Like when you start something, try to understand the title of the. Now there's this small exercise that they have given you to check your progress, which is what does the title of the lost word tell us about the poem. You can do this on your own to see whether you understand, because I am teaching you how to understand. So in that case, you can answer this for yourself, which will help you. Okay. Okay, now let us go stanza by stanza. There are 3 stanzas in this poem. Let us see the poem stanza by stanza. Just give me a. Okay, now let us go see the poem stanza by stanza. So the first stanza, she's lost a word and searches for it everywhere. Behind the sofa, at the back of dusty cupboards and drawers, she picks through the rubbish sacks. So this is the first thing. Like the first para tells you that this woman, she's lost a word. A word has been lost and she's searching for it everywhere. Where she's searching for it? Behind the sofa, at the back of cupboards and drawers, and even she's searching in the rubbish sacks or the garbage bag. So in the first stanza of the poem, we find a woman searching for a word she has lost. And she's searching for it in places which are hidden from the view or places where we keep our rubbish. So she's searching where we generally search for things, right? Like which are not in, like, where you cannot directly see. So she's searching for it in those places. But isn't it unusual to look for a word in places where we find things? So here is what I was trying to tell you. Here the poet is using word as an object. Object matlab things. So words cannot be found where you find things, right? Because a word can be found in the dictionary. Why is she looking for a word in the rubbish sack? Why is she looking for a word behind the carpet? Like, underneath the carpet or behind the cupboard. The hidden places mentioned here are places which do not require our attention on a day-to-day basis. So the reason why the poet is treating the word or what word means as a thing is because the poet Esther Morgan tries to tell you how losing a word feels like losing a thing, losing something that you have. And she's looking for it in places where we do not pay attention every day. आप जब एक वर्ड भूलना स्टार्ट करते हो, आपको वो दिमाग में नहीं आता कि आप भूल रहे हो. One fine day when you just suddenly want to say something or write something and आपको याद नहीं आता है word, that is when you realize कि oh my god I have forgotten this, which means कि आप day to day attention नहीं दे रहे हो to something that you lose. आप जब वो lost हो जाता है, once that happens, it is only when you realize कि I can't find it, that is when, like, it is only then that you realize कि आपके पास वो word available नहीं है, because वो lost, like, because you have lost it. So so she starts looking for it in places that you ignore, that you don't pay attention to, for language that you don't practice. So because you don't practice it, you have lost it. Because you have ignored it, you lost it. So she starts looking for it from the place which is ignored, which is paid less attention to. The poet then seems to suggest that the woman that lost this word is the poet then seems to suggest that the woman has lost this word in the world of her domesticity. So again, like, let's go back to the point we discussed much earlier. A poem is not just about one meaning. So इसका one of the main themes can be language, but इसका और meaning है. And यहाँ पे the poet is not just trying to say कि this woman has forgotten language, like forgotten the word she's looking for because she's out of touch in her, like, out of touch with the language that she's trying to think about. But she's also talking about gender. She's also talking about gender issues. And what does she mean यहाँ पे? She means that if you notice, she's looking for the word in all the places of a home. She's looking for the word in the world of her domesticity. She's looking for it behind the sofa, back of the cupboard, under the carpet, through the garbage. All of these are things that you have at home. So this woman is confined to the world of her home, her domestic, like her domesticity, her as you know, the name of the unit is in the domestic sphere. So in the confines of her home where she's looking for, this could mean that she does not have access to the outside world. She is not allowed into the outside world as much as she would like. Her freedom, she can't remember. Probably, we don't know what the word is. The word could be freedom. She does not know what it feels like to go outside and work. So she is looking for it in her world, which is the world of the home. This domestic world is not just a physical world, but also her mental world. because obviously she's just, this is her space, this is the place that she lives in every day. If she's not going out enough, if she's not interacting with the outside world enough, then even her mental world or the space of her head is only with these things. These are the only things that she's interacting with. The woman is so occupied in her world, like in this world, that she fails to remember this word, which is certainly an important word. So she can't remember this word because she's so occupied with this life of domesticity, this life of her house, this the duties that she fulfills in her house, that she can't remember to look outside. She can't even remember to look outside. All she's doing is looking inside the house. So you can see that the layer of this poem is just not about language, it is also about the person who is talking, like the person about whom the poem is, this particular woman, and the gender that she associates with, and the problem in the gender equality, like gender inequality that exists, and how a woman might feel confined in her home, in her domestic sphere, to the point that she forgets the world that exists outside and she can't remember it. Like we have observed in section 1.4, we should try to go beyond the literal meaning and explore the things that are implied. This is especially so in this case where the thing lost is not a thing but a word. Like these physical spaces which are hidden, we all have mental spaces which are hidden as well. So here is where the analysis or the understanding gets a little complicated. When we read the poem, we just saw the direct literal meaning of the poem with certain uh, certain observations and certain nuances. But now we are going to dig deeper. Like I said, there is another angle to it, the gender angle. Now imagine a woman who is staying at home and her world is only the home, right? And so जैसे the physical spaces of this home जहाँ you can't see, like back of the cupboard, under the sofa, underneath the carpet, वैसे even in our mental space, like in our head, there are things we can't remember because we have suppressed it. जैसे this so जैसे for example, um, if you were to, so this is where it gets a little complicated. So imagine nahi. So in psychoanalysis or in psychology, it is said that our mind is like an iceberg, and it is divided into three parts. The conscious. What is the conscious? The conscious is what we know, what we remember, what we do in our day-to-day life. The unconscious is all those things that we can't remember. We have no memory of because we have either repressed it. Repressed मतलब we have, हम लोग like किसी ने दबा दिया है, because so many new things are happening every day, right? So usually none of us remember ki what happened when we were kids, like when we were very small. We don't have memory of it. Some of us don't even, हम लोग day to day obviously सब remember नहीं करते हैं. Some because they are irrelevant, they are not important, but sometimes because the thing is so painful to us, our mind, just to keep itself sane, just to be sane and just not to go mad, what it does is that it suppresses it. It sends it to the unconscious. So think about the mind like three compartments. Conscious is what you remember. Unconscious is all those things that your mind has just filtered out and pushed over there and you can't remember. Now the third part is the subconscious, which is the interesting bit. The subconscious is that bit jahan pe you have all these when you see dreams, a lot of things happen in your dream, right? That comes from your subconscious and your conscious. So unconscious से कभी कभी थोड़ा spill हो जाता है, जैसे milk spill होता है and बाहर गिर जाता है, वैसे ही. So some of your memories that you have tried to repress, just come back to the subconscious, or say it is in your conscious but you have pushed it a little. It hasn't gone completely to the unconscious, but it is in the subconscious. So similarly, this woman, she's trying to look for this word. तो उसको थोड़ा थोड़ा याद है what the word could be, but she can't remember it because it probably is in the subconscious, unlikely in the unconscious, because unconscious होता तो उसको कुछ भी याद नहीं आता. So this is how, when you talk about, you don't have to go into the details of psychology and psychoanalysis, because it's not meant, like, it is not for this, and it is more complicated, but I'm just trying to tell you कि ये भी एक approach है. You can look at, when, like the author of this chapter has analyzed it, saying, talking about the mental spaces. Mental spaces, maybe there are hidden, like, there are things that are hidden. There are things that you cannot directly see. So this is why I explained the 3 compartments of the mind with you. And they remain hidden because we do not choose to speak about them, or we are afraid to speak about them. Often we are afraid to speak about things that are not acceptable to people and society we live in, and consequently we push these thoughts to the back of our heads. So obviously, as you can see, there are things that we don't say out loud. There are things we don't speak about even though we feel them, because we are so scared that people will judge us, or we are scared to say them because choro about people judging us. There are people who can even really attack us, and we don't want that. There are things you are not allowed to talk in society, and we come to accept them ki theek hai, we can't talk about these things. So what we do then? We obviously cannot be like, we can't talk about these things, so dimag se fek do. We can't do that. So what we do is we push it at the back of our minds. We repress it. The back of the mind is a place to hide thoughts, like the back of a sofa to hide things, which is what I was saying with the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. All of us have some experiences of hiding our feelings, or not saying, or even lying about things. So we have all done this. We have all hid our feelings for everything. We have not told someone we like them because we are scared of getting hurt. We have lied about something not to hurt others' feelings. So we do this a lot. Like, all of us have experienced this. This is especially true in case of women in traditional societies. From our childhood, we are told what is acceptable and what is not. So we learn to avoid speaking. Much of this has to do with structures of power that exist in our family and society we live in. So now when we come to this poem, what we can see is, like I said, there is a gender angle to it. This woman has probably not said a lot of things, not only because of the language, which is one angle of looking at it, but also probably because she's a woman. She was told not to say certain things. So many of our parents have told us that this is not a very ladylike thing to say. So maybe that is what she learned, that there are things that she cannot speak about because she is a woman. And what happened then is that she pushed them at the back of her mind, and she forgot how to say those things. Even though they are important things to be said. Like I said, the word that she's looking for could be freedom, but she can't remember it. And why does this happen? It happens because of how the family is set up, how the patriarchal society is set up. This is why it happens. This is why the woman does not feel empowered or safe to speak. For instance, in our society, the father remains the head of the family, and we are supposed to obey him even if he is wrong. This is especially true for girls. They are supposed to concentrate on cooking and learning how to keep the house clean, because they are expected to be homemakers when they grow up. Obviously, this is about traditional societies, and now it doesn't happen. Now we all want to be independent. We all study. We are not expected to be homemakers, or we can choose to be homemakers if we want, because being a homemaker is a full-time job. And if we want that, great, but obviously we are not expected to be that. But when Esther Morgan is writing this poem many years ago, at that point women were expected to do these things. And that is why she's writing this poem, to speak up about women. Like I said, she's speaking the through her poem, she's speaking up about the issues that exist in society. They are not allowed to have a voice in the sense of having an independent identity. So यहाँ पे the idea of not having a voice is to not have an independent identity. The reason why she cannot speak certain things is because then she will assert herself. She will create an identity for herself. And the idea of a patriarchal society is to stop that from happening, so that she can't create that identity. She will be known as someone's wife, as someone's mother, but not her own self. The woman in this poem seems to be trapped in the power structure of her world, so much that she has forgotten something vital to herself. So the woman in this poem, in this particular poem that we are talking about, is actually trapped in the confines of her home. Like I said, she is in the confines of her world, so much so that she can't even remember what freedom is. She can't remember something that is so important to her. She can't remember to look for it in places outside the house. All she can do is look for it in her world, because she has forgotten it. By pushing it at the back of her mind, she has sent it to her unconscious, and now she can't remember. So this is where we will stop today, because as you can see, this is very heavy. We will continue with this in the next class. Anyone who has any questions about anything that you can't or did not understand, then I am going to clarify them, because I know that this is a little complicated. The meaning of rubbish sacks, not socks, sacks is garbage bag. एसओएल की वेबसाइट पर नहीं है, पर आपके डैशबोर्ड में होना चाहिए रिकॉर्डेड क्लासेस. Okay, so anyone has any questions regarding whatever we did today? Any questions? Anything you want me to explain again? Anything you did not understand about how to read through the layers, how one poem does not just have one layer, but there are different layers? Anything you want me to explain again? Any other questions? Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to hear that it has happened with you, and I'm so glad you have overcome it. And I know that this is a long journey, and this has it's something that we as women have to overcome almost every day. It That is how patriarchy is. I know patriarchy is, it's wrong to say that patriarchy does not affect men. It does affect men in ways that they don't even understand. But as women, I understand the struggle, and I'm with you, and I'm so proud of you. And also thank you for appreciating the lecture, and for attending. It just makes me really happy. If you have any other questions that you want me to explain, and I'll be very happy to do that. We'll continue with this in the next class, which is I think next Friday. Thank you so much. I am I really am glad to have taught today's lecture. Okay then, I am going to disconnect if no one has any other questions. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone.